This is the Adam Goldfein Show on AM 750 and now 95.5 FM. News Talk WSB, the most entertaining and informative show on car buying, hosted by your inside source. If you don't listen to Adam Goldfein, you may end up paying more than you should. Call Adam now at 404-872-0750 and 1-800-WSB-TALK.
I'm Adam Goldfein. It is 68 degrees on Peachtree Street, 7 minutes after the hour. We have a very special show here today. I have in the studio William C. Head, affectionately known as Bubba Head. And I say that with all due deference and respect. I am thrilled to have you here in the studio. I have to tell you, you absolutely made my day, and thank you for coming in. You're going to help us educate everyone in Georgia on DUI. You are the authority. How many books have you written on this?
Well, including books that I've co-authored with other attorneys from other states, 12 of them, but much of that is mainly editing to make sure that it's readable, because these books are written for clients. They're not written for attorneys, so I wanted to make sure it was something that it would be easy to read. Okay,
and you actually give these to all prospective clients when they come to your office, right? You have a book? Yeah, and I have it here, the DUI book.
Correct, and the ones for each state have a state edition in which the book that you have is just part of it. That was 430 pages. The one that they have usually runs between 580 and 600 because they supplement it with their specific state laws.
I got you. You want to go out to the phone lines and take some of the questions from the callers? All right, let's just jump out here. John from Atlanta, thanks for holding. You're on the Adam Goldfein Show. What's your question?
Yeah, let's say you've been arrested and you've had one drink and you're unimpaired and you're driving home and you're stopped by a policeman, he asks you if you've been drinking, and you say no, and he gives you an analyzer test, and let's say it registers .01. Are you in any trouble from saying that you didn't have anything to drink?
That's a good question.
Well, here's the thing. You admitted that you drank. He smelled it, or you didn't admit that you drank, but he smelled it. But if that number happens to come up too high, or if you don't take this test at the station, the one at the roadway doesn't count. It's not an admissible number against you. It's only allowed to be used for positive for alcohol or negative for alcohol. So let's say that he takes you in because you're acting kind of funny or you can't do the field test, which nobody else can either, and they take you to jail. If you refuse the test at the station, yes, you can be convicted on that little evidence.
Well, how much alcohol does it take to actually blow a .08?
A .08 depends on your body size, and that's your lean body mass. For example, if you're 5 feet 2 inches tall and you weigh 100 pounds, that's about the normal body weight. If you're 5 feet 2 and you weigh 280, you still only use the lean body mass of a 105-pound person because fat tissue doesn't process alcohol. Only lean body tissue processes alcohol.
So it's actually, that's a false thought to say, well, if I'm heavier, I can carry more alcohol.
And unfortunately, a lot of big people try to show everybody how much they can drink, and they don't realize that they're just drunker than everybody else because they didn't know the rules.
Men and women, does it affect them differently?
It does. Women don't have as much of basically it's an enzyme that burns alcohol in the stomach. Men have more of it. Many Asians don't have any of it, male or female, in their stomachs, but women are at a disadvantage in drinking because they can't process as much of the alcohol, burn as much of it out of their system as men can, as a general rule.
Are there any kind of crazy foods or liquids or items that we ingest that could give a false positive?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Sprite, I've seen positive readings as high as a .08 on a breath machine.
On Sprite?
On Sprite, yes.
Okay. There'll be no more of that.
Wonder Bread, white Wonder Bread, .08. I've seen that done in a seminar, live in a seminar, that it gave a false reading. It wasn't alcohol. Somebody would chew up a piece of Wonder Bread. And then I told you about, I have a video on YouTube for a .089 breath test, which was nothing but a cell phone running near the machine.
Let's see. Susan from Ackworth. Welcome to the show. Susan, are you there? Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I have a CDL, drive a school bus, and occasionally like to go out and have a glass of wine with dinner, a couple times a year maybe. And what's the rule there if I were to get pulled over on the way home?
Yeah, great question.
Very good question. Unless you're in the CDL vehicle, you're treated with a .08 being your limit. in any CDL vehicle, 0.04, no matter what your age, over 21 or under 21, that's the limit.
So if she were driving a truck, right, and had the commercial driver's license, it's a 0.04.
Right. In any commercial vehicle, all school buses are commercial vehicles, and by the way, you're held to a much higher standard of no alcohol whatsoever, and I'm sure you know that from the class you took.
Yeah, but if she gets pulled over in her regular vehicle, will that have any impact or consequence then on the CDL license?
Absolutely. You cannot drive any CDL vehicle without the full license, and your license, if you're charged with DUI, is taken from you on the spot. You can't drive with any type of limited permit or a paper license.
You know, it's a good point. I'm glad you're bringing this up. The driver's license and the criminal charge of driving under the influence, are they combined into one proceeding, or are they two separate proceedings?
In Georgia, there's two separate proceedings. I'm doing cases in other states, and in North Carolina, they are a combined proceeding. But in Georgia, you could lose your license right at the front end, and that could have serious impacts on your ability to travel, rent cars, go to Canada, and you could be suspended from driving if you don't take certain steps to protect your license. And recently, the state of Georgia legislature added a $150 filing fee as of May of last year, and you have to send that in with your request to appeal any type of proposed suspension.
So that's handled on the administrative level, and then you have the criminal law on the other side.
Right. Two different judges, two different courts, two different proceedings, completely different standards of proof required. So the first proceeding on administrative is the question of will you be allowed to drive by virtue of you either having refused to take the test or you did take the test and it's above the legal limit that's applicable to you. You can be suspended even before the criminal case comes up. But that's all that could happen there. Then at the criminal case, that's where you could go to jail, pay fines, have community service. Many other punishments could be stacked on if you lose that.
All right. Ramsey from Cherokee, welcome to the Adam Goldfein Show. What's your question?
Yes, my question is, I recently turned 21 a few months ago, and I went out and bought a breathalyzer test just in case whenever I go shoot pool, to make sure that I am able to drive. And let's say that I drank, 2 or 3 beers and I wasn't sure that I was over the legal limit. Would you say that it would be better to refuse the field sobriety tests and the field breathalyzer and be taken into the station for that one for the time it takes to work the alcohol out of my system?
Well, it's generally my advice not to take field evaluations because the Clemson study showed how often people fail it when they're not the slightest bit impaired. And so the field tests are really not designed with precision to determine who's impaired and who's not. So the bottom line is the field tests are all optional, and if you've taken your little handheld device, it's not as precise as other devices, plus your alcohol level can continue rising after the last drink for up to 2 hours. Because one of the things I thought Adam was going to ask me is what's the best thing to eat if you're going to drink, and that would be high-protein foods.
Yeah, we could get to that as far as all the things. Like, so if we go out to dinner, right, and I have a glass of wine,
sure,
what should I do? I mean, because you mentioned now just one, you just said time, right? So time
is it has to be there, and also if you're drinking something like straight alcohol, like you don't want to be drinking anything that's high alcohol content, you need to dilute it. But the main thing about it is that high-protein food doesn't eliminate how much alcohol gets in your system. It just puts a lower peak. The area under the peak stays lower, and you don't have a big spike due to the fact that it hits your stomach and goes right into your bloodstream quickly. The food in your stomach, high-protein food, slows down the motility of your body so that it doesn't all get in very quickly. It takes a while to process.
You know, one of the things that really struck me about your book was how scientific the entire process is and how much more to the DUI defense exists beyond simply going through the mechanics of it. Everything from, as you discussed, the software and the machine to the behavior of the individual, at the roadside, and then maybe the behavior in the police car and possibly at the jail. All of the food that they've ingested, whether that gave false positives or negatives, the individual's weight, what I guess their physical condition was. You've already mentioned what other types of prescriptions or other medicines they might have been on.
Right.
All these things, I would assume, change the fact patterns subtly, and then it might have a tremendous impact on the outcome.
That's correct. Every case is different. We never assume that one DUI is like the other because every individual has a different tolerance for alcohol. They may have had a more steady, low pace of alcohol. They didn't drink that much, whereas other people seem to be in some kind of a contest of how much they can get down in the shortest period of time. So we try to get all that information, and we also get full health background, because if you're a diabetic or hypoglycemic or you've been on a high-protein diet, the highest reading I've seen in literature is a 0.17 from a diabetic with no alcohol. 0.17 on the same machine Georgia uses, and that was a case out of Sweden.
Wow. Let's go back out to the phone lines. If you have a question, you can call at 404-872-0750. You're listening to William Head, who is probably, in my opinion, the nation's leading legal expert on driving under the influence. He's here in the studio with us, being very gracious with his time. By the way, if you want to see some of his videos, you can YouTube him at Bubba Head. You can go to YouTube and look at Bubba Head, or you can go to his website, GeorgiaCriminalDefense.com. Patrick from Alpharetta, welcome to the Adam Goldfein Show.
How you doing?
Good.
I don't want to take you off the beaten path, but it could be a result of DUI, but mine wasn't. I made a big mistake 13 years ago, got pulled over and charged with possession and have a felony on my record. So I want to see if there's any way to have my rights restored. I got the rights restored to vote, got a driver's license, everything else. It was just a big mistake. The attorney that I got talked to him about going on the first offenders. He's like, no, don't do that in case you screw up again. You'll be in big trouble. Well, I wasn't planning on it and went with my attorney's advice and didn't go on to the first offenders, and now I've got this felony hanging over me. And I want to know if there's something I can do to, have my rights restored.
All right.
Well, there's a situation where you've got to either have the governor give you a pardon, and that's pretty rare. If you've lived an exemplary life, I've actually seen it happen in Georgia.
Really?
For a person, yeah, sure have. But it's very hard to, we don't have a normal expunction law. And people say expungement, but it's E-X-P-U-N-C-T-I-O-N. We don't have the normal law here, and so getting that off your record is no easy task. And so unless the governor gives you a pardon, I don't think you're going to get that off your record. And I don't want to go back and prejudge what your attorney said, because first offender might be a problem in certain jurisdictions if you did have another problem down the road.
It begs the question to me, as far as if you have an arrest and a conviction for DUI, I think that people may or may not realize that it follows you. This is a tattoo that's permanent.
It's there for life. You take it to the grave. It never comes off your record. You can't get rid of it, even if you pled no contest. It's there for life.
So when we come back, what I'd like you to help me do is let's walk down your top consequences if you end up with a DUI conviction, okay?
Glad to do it.
You're listening to Adam Goldfein. I have my guest in the studio, William Head. Phone line is 404-872-0750. You're listening to AM 750 and now 95.5 FM. News Talk, WSB.